She was just 14, a bright, compassionate kid from Armada, Michigan, a one-stoplight town where neighbors still wave from porches and leave their doors unlocked. April Millsap wasn't the kind of girl who faded into the background. She dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, doted on her dog Penny, and filled her small world with kindness, laughter, and promise. But on July 24th, 2014, a normal summer walk turned into a nightmare. April leashed up Penny and headed out to the Macomb Orchard Trail, a quiet stretch of pavement winding through trees and farmland, just steps from her home. It was the kind of path that most people wouldn't think twice about, but that day, something went wrong, horribly wrong. Minutes before vanishing, April sent a chilling text to her boyfriend, just 7 words that will haunt everyone who reads them. I think I almost got kidnapped. And then, silence. Hours later, Penny tried to bring help to her. Her body was found just off the trail, beaten, discarded, and robbed of the future that she so richly deserved. This wasn't just a murder. It was a rupture. The town of Armada was shattered. Strangers began eyeing each other with suspicion. Rumors spread faster than truth. And somewhere in the chaos, someone knew what happened. This is Dark Dialogue, the stories behind the headlines and the voices that refuse to be forgotten. Today, we begin the story of April Millsap, not just a victim, not just a headline, a daughter, a dreamer, a life that mattered. So, Angela, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. Another day in paradise, something like that.
Paradise?
Yeah, something like that.
When did our zip code change? I'm kidding.
You weren't notified?
I was not notified.
And you're missing out. But
where have I been?
I don't know where in the hell you've been. But, when 14-year-old April Millsap leashed up her dog and walked into the woods that July afternoon, she didn't know that she was walking into the hands of a predator. She didn't know that her final text would spark panic or that her hometown would never feel safe again. She just wanted to go for a walk, have a moment of peace, and instead, she vanished.
It's one of those cases that knocks the wind out of you. A girl just walking her dog in broad daylight in a community where danger wasn't supposed to exist. And then a single text. I think I almost got kidnapped. And she's gone.
Yeah, and this is another one of those, this was a tough one for me. It's a tough one to research.
This one.
It's going to be a tough one to talk about. This is a tough one. There's my trigger warning.
Okay.
I mean, it's just tough. But listeners, welcome back to Dark Dialogue, the podcast where we unravel the shadows of the human mind and dive deep into the mysteries that haunt small towns and big cities alike. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Angela, and together we'll shine a light on the stories that keep us up at night, unsolved disappearances, lives stolen too soon, and the questions that refuse to be buried.
In this episode, we begin our journey into the case of April Millsap, a young girl with a bright future, a big heart, and a tragic ending. We'll look at who she was, what happened that day on the trail, and how her final moments sent a shockwave through her community and beyond.
We'll talk about the warning signs, the investigation that followed, and the ripple effect of her murder. Because April wasn't just a victim, she was a daughter, a friend, a girl with dreams of becoming a vet, and her story deserves to be told in full.
If you believe cases like April's deserves more than a footnote, take a second right now to follow the show. Leave a review, give us a thumbs up, and most importantly, share this episode. Post it, tag us, talk about it. The more people who hear her name, the harder it becomes for her story to be forgotten.
Your support helps us keep asking the hard questions and helps families know that their loved ones still matter. Join us on Patreon, chip in on coffee, or become part of the Dark Dialogue Collective to help fuel this work. Every share, every dollar, and every listen makes a difference.
This is Dark Dialogue, and this is The Girl on the Trail. Who was April Millsap? You got to dig up some location information. I know you're excited about that.
I am.
All right, well, tell us where we're going this week.
So we are in, and I think you pronounced it Armada.
Uh-huh.
So Armada, Michigan is a village in Macomb County, which I will touch more on in a bit. But the first record of land purchased in the area that became Armada Township was made by John Proctor in 1825. 23 more families had bought land in the rural area by 1832. There's that word. I know. Until that year, the area was part of Ray Township. A meeting was soon called to organize a separate township, and the vote won by 2. Only 2. Thus, Armada Township was founded. When the discussion began to choose the name for the new township, legend says that Hosea Northrup jumped up and shouted the name Armada. The name was accepted without anyone totally understanding the meaning.
Oh, I love that.
I do too. The village grew as residents improved on Old Native American Trail, which became a key route between Romeo and Port Huron, now Armada Ridge Road. The village was incorporated as Armada in the late 1860s. While I will mention the census records for Armada, they will be part of the overall statistics when I talk about Macomb County in a bit. 10 years after it was incorporated, the 1870 census reported 494 people. Around 2010, 4 years before this tragedy occurred, they reported an increase to 1730 people, 1730 people. And in 2020, a reduction to 1,684 people was recorded. A notable person from Armada, Michigan is John Huff, a sharpshooter who mortally wounded Confederate General J.E.B. Stuart during the Civil War. Kind of thought John would appreciate that.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Huff, a native of Armada, shot Stuart during the Battle of Yellow Tavern in Virginia, though he himself was killed in action just 20 days later. His home in Armada still stands on East Main Street if you want to go visit it.
I think I do, actually.
I think you should.
This town seems like a freaking cool little town.
It does.
And I want to go there.
It does. Armada has hosted a county fair every August since 1872.
That's freaking real.
So you should go in August.
I'll have to. Yep.
However, the reason I now want to visit myself, specifically on the second Saturday in October, is the Halloween festival known as Armada-geddon.
That's pretty freaking clever.
It celebrates the fall fun and all things spooky. That is right up my alley. The event includes a 5K walk, run, and shamble, a street fair with craft vendors and food, games and activities for children, and in the evening, a lighted Halloween parade. So bucket list item number 8,743.
I'm right on.
So you'll go in August, I'll go in October.
Perfect.
It works. Now I'll talk a little bit about Macomb County and a few little tidbits from that county as a whole. It is part of the Detroit metropolitan area. Why did that word look so out? It looked like...
I don't know why.
It looked like it was wrong to me. Do you ever have that? You look at a word and it's like, that's just wrong. It is part of the Detroit metropolitan area, bordering Detroit to the north and containing many of its northern suburbs. Was formally organized on January 15th, 1818 as the third county in the Michigan Territory. The county was named in honor of Detroit-born Alexander Macomb Jr., highly decorated veteran of war in 1812 and hero of the Battle of Plattsburgh. He was made commanding general of the U.S. Army in 1828. A lot of Army stuff for you.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I mean, this that hangs above me is an original flag from the War of 1812.
I knew it was very important to you.
Yeah, that flag flew. And you know what's really unique about that particular flag? Well, it has 13 stars and 13 stripes. Right?
Yeah.
And
I was counting really fast.
And
if you couldn't tell.
It is the flag that the Star Spangled Banner was written about. It only flew for like 3
Nice.
years, I think. And then,
No wonder it is very important to you.
because the original idea was to add one star and one stripe for every state. And then they came to the realization that they were going to end up with a flag that was like 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
So they decided, okay, we'll keep it at 13 and we'll just add stars.
Yeah. I gotcha. So, Macomb County, Michigan is known for its blend of suburban living, automotive industry influence, obviously, and recreational opportunities. It's recognized for the General Motors Tech Center in Warren, a global hub for automotive innovation, and its numerous parks and metro parks. The county also boasts attractions like Jimmy John's Field, which, with its minor league baseball team and family-friendly activities, and C.J. Barrymore's Family Entertainment Center, an indoor-outdoor amusement park. Additionally, Macomb County is known for its diverse dining, shopping, and entertainment options, as well as its strong community atmosphere. The census records are quite astounding, and now remember, this is for the county as a whole. In 1810, 580 residents were reported, and that grew to 840,978
Wow.
in 2010.
That's, I mean, I don't know why I'm surprised by that, but that's quite a bit more than the whole state of Wyoming.
Yeah. A couple of Wyomings landed there in 2010.
Yeah.
And that was just 4 years before this story takes place. But an estimated 886,175 people lived there as of 2024.
They're going to break 1 million before too long.
Yeah, it is way too big for me.
Because Detroit's growing again.
Yeah. Well, because we're building again, aren't we? Yeah. So there is an absolute ton of notable names brought to us by various parts of this country, and we do not have time to name them all. So naturally, I will throw out a few that caught my eye while reading up on it. Actors Dean Cain and Dave Coulier originated from this county, as well as several musicians. Maybe you've heard of a few: Eminem, Alice Cooper, Kid Rock, and Uncle Kracker.
Wow. I knew Kid Rock and I knew Eminem, not because I cannot stand him, but because, I don't know, it's some crap with this
8 Mile.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, until, I guess it was, I'm pretty sure it's True Crime Garage. No, it's True Crime All the Time. I think one of them guys lived in Detroit, and I think that it's Mike that lived in Detroit for some time. And so he was talking about, like, I don't know, I guess that's how Detroit's laid out, like 8 Mile, 10 Mile, whatever. I don't know a thing about Detroit. I've never been there, but
I have friends that live there.
I knew that Kid Rock come from that area, who I really like. I think he's freaking awesome. Uncle Cracker's all right. Alice Cooper's badass.
Right.
But yeah, Alice Cooper, this is the reason, not Michigan, but that area is why he made an appearance in what movie?
Wayne's World.
Like, actually, Milwaukee.
Can't even see Milwaukee without hearing that now.
But yeah, so thank you for that. That was that was really cool. I enjoyed all of the history he had in there. So do you know why the guy was a sharpshooter? You know where the term sharpshooter comes from?
No, I do not.
It's because they started with the Sharps rifle, making the Sharps rifle allowed them to make those long distance shots. So they became known as Sharps shooters, which then got shortened to sharpshooter.
Oh, they took one letter away and it just was easier to say, got it.
Yep. But yeah, I don't know. Is this like a new thing? Is I got to come up with some nonsense trivia bullshit for every episode?
I was just about to ask you, why do you test me every time?
It's just fun. I like to see your face when you're like, you son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch. And then my face when I actually know. And I'm like, ha ha. I knew it.
Then I got to throw in a secondary question just to tone down your arrogance a little bit.
You all should see his face when he's like, shit, now I got to come up with something else.
Yeah, it's kind of becoming a thing, and it's not planned. I don't know why. It's because I got so much useless bullshit information in my brain that it's just like you say something, and I'm like, oh, I know some dumb shit about that.
Why haven't you gone on any game shows yet? You don't have time.
Doesn't interest me.
Well, and you don't have time.
I think that, it just doesn't interest me. Does not.
We're just gonna leave it at that.
I mean, what's the one that they?
It wouldn't let you wear your V mask on a.
Well, there you go. There's another reason. But what's the one where they're like, you can like take $100,000 or you keep going and then you get to $1 million and they have like all the briefcases and bullshit up there. They open briefcases.
Deal or no deal.
Yeah. I'd go on there and they'd be like, I'm offering you 10,000. I'd be like, okay, take it. I'm out. Absolutely.
That'll help enough, then walk out with nothing.
That sure drives me crazy because they keep saying no until they're freaking broke. I'd be like, yes, make me an offer. I'll take it.
It was more than you had 5 minutes ago.
Exactly.
Be happy and move on.
I would suck at game shows because I'd be like, can I just take what I have now and leave?
Yeah, can I just call it good?
I'm a terrible gambler because I'm always like, okay, I'm good with that. Yeah, put a quarter in a slot machine, 75 cents comes out. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good.
That's good, yeah.
Better than where I started, so I'm good with that.
That's how I feel about it too. So when I hit, I'm like, I'm done. Other people are like, no, put some in your pocket, put 20 back in. No, I'm done.
Yeah, that is.
Why piss off the luck gods?
That is the way that I gamble for sure. Is I'll go in with like $20, and if I've decided I'm gonna blow $20 gambling, then I'm good with blowing $20. But as soon as I've made $20, it's locked into my pocket, and then I only play with my winnings. So worst case scenario, once you've made your 20,
yep,
you break even.
Yep.
So I am not the dude that's going to go rack up a bunch of debt to keep playing because I
doubt.
I don't think so. But anyway, so we better get on with this story because it's a brutal one. So I'm glad we got
trying to postpone the brutality.
Glad we got a little bit of a laugh in. Obviously, this is episode 1, so we don't get into the terrible, terrible, terrible stuff, but the whole thing's terrible. So obviously, we're talking about April Millsap, who was born January 2nd, 2000, which is just another freaking issue with this is because she's like a month older than my son. So, yeah,
that hits home.
He was born February of 2000. So, and she was born in Wise County, Virginia, and she was the only child of Jennifer Millsap and Bobby Millsap. And it was a healthy birth, not like.
Okay. Sorry, my brain just went, what? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because you're thinking of what's his damn
Ronnie
Millsap. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for that. It was a healthy birth, no reported complications. And her early life was in Virginia and was marked by, a typical infancy, family focused with parents providing a nurturing environment. So Mother Jennifer worked locally and her father was involved initially. And the family was described as close during April's early years with no specific stories or milestones talked about at all, but portrayed as a happy early childhood. And so they lived a nuclear family life in Virginia. April was doted on as a child, but her parents' relationship was strained, which led to a separation when April was pretty young. I couldn't find exactly, but I think that it was around 4 or so. When she was around 4 or so is when they got divorced.
Okay.
And there's absolutely no custody battles that were noted at all. Her mom basically just became her, main provider at that point. And then, so
because it was amicable or just because he failed?
I think he failed.
Okay.
Because he doesn't factor into her story beyond this time at all.
Do better, Bobby.
Yeah. So I think that he failed. I mean, there may have been some occasional contact, but I couldn't find any of it. And then Mom started dating a guy by the name of David Lickenfeld. And he's reported as being her stepfather, but I don't think that that's true. I don't think they were ever married, but he damn sure stepped in as father to April. No doubt about that. And they had a very close relationship. He was just her dad. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of remarkable, not that not that a guy stepped up and was a dad, because that's our job, but it's a little remarkable that he took such a role in her life and was not even her stepfather. He literally was her mom's boyfriend, but it made no difference. That was his little girl almost from the second they met, it sounds like. And they, yeah, I mean, they had a very close relationship. Everything describes their relationship as extremely close. So, thank God for this guy, and what a stand-up
Yeah.
dude. And, it's really cool. But they relocated to Armada, which you just got done talking about, for a quieter life.
Yeah, and if you can't find me in the next 2 months, that's where I'm at.
It sounds like a freaking awesome place. It really does. And I'll be talking about it throughout this, but I just got to say, man, the the cops in this story, I was watching an interview, and again, sorry, I'm pulling from memory instead of my notes, but it was either like it was one of the investigators. I can't remember if it was the sheriff or if he was city police. I just don't remember. But in the interview, he couldn't he couldn't keep his composure. He was crying because it was his job to protect them, and he failed. And it's like, all right, dude, you take that so personal. Like, you're a good freaking cop.
Yeah.
You're a good freaking cop. And this interview was years
And
after.
can you train other cops, please?
No shit. But I just got it as this small town police force that truly cares about their community and truly are there to serve and protect their community. And they take that oath very seriously. And as we work through this case, they also do some freaking stand-up investigative work. I mean, it is hard to believe that they're in such a tiny little town, because, man, they could teach some big city detectives some shit with the way that they handled this case. But we'll get into all that. Anyway, the family settled in a modest house on Fulton Street in Armada. It was a safe environment, community-oriented. And then they added the family dog, Penny, who was a border collie, which border collies are near and dear to my heart. I grew up with them. We had them as cattle dogs, and so I just fell in love with the breed. But if you're not familiar with border collies,
Adorable.
they're about as intelligent as, I don't know, half the high school graduates out there. I mean, they are such freaking smart dogs that's almost scary how damn smart border collies are.
I have to tangent. Our neighbor had one when we moved out there, and they have free-range chickens. And we had chickens under our porch. One day, stepped on the porch, chickens fly out. And I yelled to the neighbor's house, "Kip, come get your chickens." And he did.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, the best cow dog I ever had, and named him Badger for obvious reasons. And you literally could ride to the top of a hill, and I could say, "Badger, go gather them and take them to the gate." And he would go gather the cows at the bottom, take them to the gate, and I would go over and gather other cows and meet him at the gate. They're amazing dogs.
And the look on Kip's face too was like, "Son of a bitch." 3 of them got away,
Yeah,
You get your ass back here.
They're so incredibly smart, and just, they're very high energy. They're not probably the best dogs for in town unless you can walk them all the time and everything, but they're amazing dogs. And, April and Penny just formed this really close bond. I mean, that was her dog.
Well, yeah.
And so, the community life in Armada, it was peaceful, very low crime village. And, like you told us about it, it's known for its fairs, its orchards, trails. It's really pretty.
Community is big.
Yeah. Huge. And it's a really pretty location too. I mean, it really just
That's the
seems
only
like
thing I didn't do is look that up. So here we go.
it's beautiful. I mean, the trail where this tragedy takes place is a gorgeous trail. And so from the ages of about 8 to 14, April enjoyed outdoor activities. She went on regular dog walks on the Macomb Orchard Trail. And I don't understand this at all, but I guess I just don't understand this bullshit. But I mean, this was a very pretty little girl. But for whatever reason, she developed like this body image issue where she thought she was I mean, she's a tiny little thing. I don't know if you saw pictures of her or not,
No, not yet.
but she's a little bitty thing. But anyway, she thought that she was
It's
fat.
society, and it does that to all of us.
And so she got this fitness tracker app. I'm pretty sure it was MyFitnessPal, if you're familiar with that one,
Mhm.
and started these daily walks, you know. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's bad that she was doing that. I think it's great that she was outside exercising and stuff, but she had
Not in the mentality that she was doing it.
yeah, and she had no reason to think, and no kid does. I mean, for crying out loud, she was 14 freaking years old.
Right?
If she would have been a little bit chubby, it would have been fine, but she was not a little bit chubby. She was a little bitty thing. So I don't know where that came from, but I bring it up because it's going to be a huge part of this story.
This is a beautiful little town.
It is a beautiful little town. Yeah, it's gorgeous. And so, you know, the Macomb Orchard Trail, we'll be talking about it throughout, but it's a really nice paved trail that kind of winds through the woods and the fields. And that so she would take her dog Penny walking on that every day.
My goodness, she was gorgeous.
Oh yeah, she's a beautiful little girl. Yeah. And she would take her dog walking on that trail every day, you know, and I mean, it's the kind of trail that I could spend hours on. It's just beautiful. And then, you know, she helped with with household chores. Family dinners were common. And then, you know, she growing up in Armada, she would have participated in the fairs and all the festivities that you talked about when you were telling us about it. She made friends easily through school, and she was known for her outgoing nature. She participated in community events, and there's really no reported troubles or anything. The only thing I could find was that body shaming thing, which honestly a lot of teenage girls go through. Not just teenage girls, a lot of
Anybody's.
teenagers go through, you know, that whole thing anyway. But you know,
You can judge by a picture too. She looks very sweet. Like,
she really
very,
does.
very sweet.
Yeah, she really looks like just a really pretty, sweet little girl. I mean, yeah. And she loved animals deeply. She fed strays. She cared for Penny. Like, I mean, they were best friends. And she wanted to be a vet, you know, so she really loved animals. She enjoyed reading, music, texting with friends, and she was tech savvy. And like I said, she got the MyFitnessPal app and she had her cell phone, and she was growing up at that time where, you know, like now, every kid has a cell phone, you know what I mean? So, you know, she was on it a lot. And this was also, I don't know, I think it's maybe slowed down a little bit, but this was like social media at
Yeah.
its prime where you're posting everything.
Every meal.
Just tied my shoes. I just stood up. I never understood that shit, but that's the time period that we're talking about. So
Oh, you just made me go quote Easy A in my head.
I don't know what that means.
Teacher says, "What is it with you kids and posting absolutely every thought?" Like, I can't remember the kid's name, but he's like, "Just got to the gas station and bought a Coke Zero."
So freaking true, man. And then she had creative outlets like drawing animals. She participated in church activities. She was strong with her family. And, you know, she had a good relationship with her mom, but she was kind of going into those teenage years a little bit, you know. And so they were, I mean, they were having normal. There was no like big blow up fights. She wasn't rebellious, nothing like that. They were typical mom daughter.
Teenage things, yeah.
But she did keep a very strong bond with her mom's boyfriend. I mean, they were like best buddies, and he had come into her life when I think she was 6. And so now she's 14. So he is her dad.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, I don't think her dad had anything to do with, or very little at the very least. He
Damn
was
it,
still in
Bobby.
Virginia, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
so, you know, they were a long ways away, but she attended elementary school in Armada after their move, and she excelled academically. She was described as smart. She was an eager learner, no learning disabilities or anything like that. And then enrolled in Armada Middle School, which was for grades 6 through 8. And so she graduated 8th grade during the spring of 2014 and was set to enter Armada High School that fall. And so she was involved in her classes, possibly some clubs. I couldn't find anything like that specifically, but teachers recalled her as a positive and helpful student. She got good grades. She received her communion in 2010 at St. Mary Mystical Rose Catholic Church, which was a milestone celebrated with her families. No sports activities that I could find, but she loved her walks, and peers viewed her as a reliable friend. So she was excited for high school, which every kid that age just can't wait, like to start high school. That's such a big freaking milestone.
I was not that kid.
Oh, I was definitely that kid, because that meant that I was getting older and could leave home soon. Without a doubt. I mean, we didn't have junior high, or we didn't have middle school. Did you?
I was the first 8th grade class in our middle school.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't have middle school. We had junior high, and so.
Yeah, I went to junior high and then middle school. It was very weird.
Oh, that is really weird.
We went to junior high. We started 8th grade in junior high. We went to Christmas break. After Christmas break, we went to middle school.
Oh, that's really weird.
Really weird. That's what's wrong with me.
Wow.
I've just decided just now that's what's wrong with me.
So, the whole junior high experience was so much different, because you were at the high school. You're just like in a different part, but you were still, I mean, some of your, at least here,
we were
some of your
subject to the high school.
Some of your classes were in the high school. So you literally had to walk through the senior hall to get to some of your classes.
That was intimidating as hell, let me tell you.
It was very freaking intimidating. And those kids were so big, but we were so little. I mean, figure you start in 7th grade, you're pretty damn small compared to seniors, But anyway, she was upbeat, friendly, kind-hearted. She was described by her friends and her mom as being beautiful inside and out. She was caring, loving. Like we said, she loved pets. That came up so many times. Loved animals. But she was bright, smart, ambitious, church-going, community-minded. And like I already said before, there was really no rebellious phase noted. She handled her family changes maturely. And she aspired to become a veterinarian from a very early age. She had a passion for animals, and she planned college. She planned her college as vet school, and her mom encouraged those dreams, seeing potential tied to the daily life that, she loves. She loves spending time with Penny and stuff like that. So she found something that she was that passionate about just as a kid, and so. I think that they just seem like a very, very close family. And her mom has a really bad speech impediment. So she's really hard to understand. And so, I don't know, it kind of factors into the story just simply because when she's excited, which we'll talk about later, she's almost, you can't understand her because she has a pretty bad speech impediment anyway. And then when she gets excited, it gets really bad. But between her mom and her, I'm just going to start calling her stepfather, I guess.
I mean, why not?
I mean, essentially he is. And because he was in her life from a very early age, and he helped her with her homework. He attended all of her school events. They shared households, He's described as being extremely attentive, providing stability, absolutely no conflicts reported, quite the opposite. They had a very close relationship. And so it's noted that she was really growing up just surrounded by love. Her mom adored her. David adored her. And so, I mean, it's the best possible situation for a child to grow up in, and the worst possible scenario for a tragedy like this to happen. And I'm not saying that
it was good,
right. I'm not saying like any parent is happy when their kids die, but there are those parents out there that really don't pay any attention to their kids and don't really even, factor into their lives much at all.
Yeah.
But when you're
Like Bobby.
right, but like when you're best friends with your kids and stuff, I mean, it just makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
So summer, she was enjoying her summer in 2014. I mean, as any kid is doing, they're enjoying their time off from school.
Yeah.
She just graduated middle school. She was excited for high school, and she kept her routine, which one of her big daily routines was the evening walks with Penny. And, she would text her mom and text her boyfriend pretty regularly on those trips. And I mean, there was just no indication that anything bad was coming at all. And then on July 24th of 2014, it was a hot Thursday. And, she was a freaking teenager. So she slept till about noon or so. I mean, she's a teenager on summer break. So,
Yep.
she
Oh,
slept till
the
about
memories.
noon. And yeah. And, this case coming so soon after the Heather Dawn Church case, it's kind of the same situation with April as it was with Heather when I say, okay, yes, teenager, but kind of just,
Yeah.
like 13, 14, you're kind of into that teenagery thing, but not really. You're still a little kid, And so April was very much that. She was maturing and moving into, that teenage period.
Mhm.
But at 14, you're really not there yet. And so, but that Thursday was hot. So she left home after getting out of bed and getting going and everything. She left home around 6 to 6:30 to take her dog Penny for a walk. And her and her boyfriend were teenagers. And I don't even know if I need to explain any more than that because it pretty well covers everything. But it was they were teenagers in a relationship and acting like teenagers. And so at this particular moment, they were having a fight about something. And it doesn't even matter what it was about. It doesn't factor in, but they were having a fight. And so she texted him at 6:28 and said, I think I almost got kidnapped. I think I'll have to look and make sure, but I'm pretty sure that it was like, OMG, I think I almost got kidnapped. And then they were having a little spat. And so I just can see it. I can see it happening.
Yeah.
Like he was like, I'm not even going to look at the I don't even care what she's saying.
Yeah.
So he didn't respond back to her for quite some time. And so when she left the house that day, she was dressed casually. I think she had on jeans, a tank top, and then just, sneakers. And she carried her cell phone with her, all kids then did all the time.
Yes.
But she really wanted it because she was tracking her miles, her step counts, So it really factors in big to this case. That's why you keep coming back to it. So when she left the house, she started it. And I don't know, have you used MyFitnessPal?
No, but I have used similar.
Yeah, so I've used this particular one a lot. I really like the app, but like so many of those, you like start your run, and then you stick it in your pocket, whatever. It counts your steps, your miles, and all that. So she did that when she left. She started her run or her walk or whatever, and then Jennifer, her mom, saw her leave the house, and I mean, there was absolutely nothing to be concerned about. And she entered the trail near Depot Street, and the path was about 1 to 2 miles from home. And there are wooded sections. I mean, it's a beautiful trail, and it kind of winds through the woods. And I think there's kind of goes past a lake on one side, and it goes up through the trees. And it's really a very pretty trail. But, one of the bad parts about it, and this case really reminds me a lot of the Delphi murders case because the trails are real similar type of trails,
Okay.
the Monon High Bridge Trail in the Delphi case, it's a similar trail that winds through the trees, and all the kids go and walk this trail. And This one seems like a very similar type situation. And then, the text message, in light of what is coming, is really freaking chilling. And it was, OMG, I think I almost got kidnapped. I think it was like OMFG.
Probably. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was, but it was sent while she was on the trail, which now, I mean, we know that it indicates some kind of weird shit was going on
Yeah.
that trail.
Somebody's watching her.
Right. I mean, it's really hard. I know the whole story, so I know what was going on, but at this point in the story, it's really hard. Like, okay, did she see somebody creepy, or what just freaking happened?
There's a tiny part of me that remembers being a 14-year-old girl fighting with a boyfriend, and that could be a way just to get him to talk.
Right. Yep.
So,
yeah, and I can remember being a 14-year-old boy in a relationship, and you're like ticked off at your girlfriend, and you're like, I don't know texting because we didn't have that.
no,
But
we didn't.
I could see myself, if I put myself in a teenager's shoes that could text, I could see myself being like, I'm not even looking because
I
I'm a
pissed off at
14-year-old
you.
brat and I'm not even paying attention to you right now. I could just, I mean, yes.
The hand on the hip was 100% needed too, by the way.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You can't act the part if you don't be the part.
This is true.
Don't you know anything
The
about
part.
method acting? But anyway,
People out there are like, why are they only voice? Why can't we see them?
I
This is why.
got my mask. So, it was, we don't know exactly what led to that text, but as we get into the story, I can give you my opinion of what I think happened. But between 6:30 and 8, April was ambushed on the trail and then dragged into the woods, kind of down into a drainage ditch, where she was brutally beaten. And I'll say this, it's rough to say, it's rough to picture. We're gonna have to talk about the specifics, and it's not fun, but she was stomped on the neck, in the face, and the body, which led to asphyxiation by the foot on her throat and stuff. There was an attempted sexual assault because her clothes were torn off of her. It was unsuccessful, but she was found partially nude. She, like we said, she was last seen leaving the home between 6 and 6:30 for the walk. She sent the weird text message at 6:28. And so her estimated time of death is just shortly thereafter, between like 6:30, 6:45. And a lot of this information we learn from that fitness tracker app, because she turned it on and it was running. And so her mom grew concerned that she hadn't come home by 7:30, 8 o'clock. And so she reached out to her boyfriend, Austin Albertson is her boyfriend's name. And Austin came over, and then Jennifer and Austin start searching for April. And then I heard it reported a couple different ways. I heard it reported as a man and a wife, and I heard it reported as like a guy and his girlfriend or fiance. So I'm not entirely sure, and it really doesn't matter. But Penny was on the trail, and I can picture the dog exactly what she did. And she was getting help for her best friend is what she was doing. And so the walker, he first they were like, "What's wrong, puppy?" Like thought they had a dog in distress, but she wouldn't let him grab her. She kept running back into the woods, and
Come with me.
yes.
Come with me.
And so the guy was like, okay, I know what's going on here. So he followed Penny back, and he's the one that discovered the body laying there. So, Penny did everything she could, to save her owner. And it honestly probably led to the body being discovered hours or even days before it would have been.
Yeah.
And so the body was discovered shortly after 8 o'clock, approximately 8:30, or roughly 2 hours after the
It's not a
attack.
long timeline at all.
No, not at all. The tragic part of the whole thing is the story is just so freaking tragic, everything about it. But so mom and Austin are searching and they thank God didn't come up on the scene, but they come upon law enforcement who had been called to the scene. And so then, the deputy or whatever it was that was kind of doing crowd control calls up to the investigators and says, I've got a woman and a boy here that she says they can't find her daughter, his boyfriend. And so the investigator was like, tell him to go to the police station and I'll meet him there. And this really speaks to the size of this tiny little community.
Yeah.
Because I think the police station was like blocks away. I mean, it was in walking distance. It was right there. It's a tiny little town. And so mom and boyfriend head down to the police station. And this is where David, the stepfather, this is where he said she called him and he just couldn't understand what she was saying. He couldn't figure out, but he got out of her that they were headed to the police station. So he went down there as well. So you have Austin and his parents at the police station. Then you have April's parents at the police station waiting for all of this to unfold. Right. So the location of the body, like I said, was off the Macomb Orchard Trail, and it was in a shallow ditch, just kind of right off of the trail. It kind of looked like an irrigation ditch, kind of along a field, and she was kind of down in there.
Okay.
So definitely not visible from the trail. You had to step kind of into the woods in order to see her, and that's why I say because of Penny, she was probably found way sooner than she would have been.
Yeah.
But she was roughly 20 to 30 feet off of the paved path near Omo Road and North Avenue intersection in this secluded spot back in the trees and the brush.
I hate to say it, but I'm a little shocked that the guy left the dog.
Well, you'll understand why.
Okay.
So she was found about like a mile and a quarter or so from her house on Fulton Street. And so, I mean, she was in her neighborhood. She was home.
Yeah.
That day it was hot and humid in the 80s. And it was obviously we're in the summertime, that time of night, dusk is approaching. There's reduced visibility, which makes investigating more difficult for sure. The two people that discovered her body, like I said, were a couple of joggers, Matthew Sadaj and his girlfriend or his wife, or I couldn't find her name. His name is Matthew Sadha, Sadaj, and they were out for a routine run or a walk, and everything transpired that I said. And this guy, he jumped into action and he did what a lot of people don't do, and that is he immediately went to render aid and confirmed that there was no pulse, at which time he backed off and avoided touching the scene or doing anything. I mean, the dude really sounds like he knew what the hell he was doing. I don't know his history, but so many times I read these stories and they find a body and you're like, you didn't check to see if they were alive? Like what?
Yeah.
Or they find a body and just destroy the scene. And this guy did everything perfect. Like he confirmed that she didn't have a pulse, and then he just backed out, left everything.
Only touched pulse points and got out of there.
Yes. And then he called 911 and, he said, we found a body, and the 911 operator did what they always do. And he was like, no, she's dead. Like he confirmed it.
Mm.
And you won't hear me in this episode say one bad thing about any of the cops in this case. They're a bunch of freaking awesome cops. So they responded to the scene immediately, like I said, and then they had to make the notification once they confirmed identity. And that happened at the police station because that's where Jennifer was sent to go,
Yeah.
And so The officers noted obvious signs of a struggle. She'd been dragged off the trail. At that point, they assumed sexual assault because, her clothes had been partially removed and the positioning of her body. There was no weapon found, and the scene was processed. I mean, they did everything right. They brought out the lights and everything, and they set up the shit. They didn't waste any freaking time. They dove right into investigating the scene, just like you would expect.
Right.
Just like
You would hope.
you would hope. But it's so often you hear these cases. Sometimes it's little departments, sometimes it's big, where they're like, oh well, it's too dark. We'll do it in the morning, or they make so many mistakes. We talked
They
about
make
it.
flashlights, people.
But these guys, no. And so, like I said, the body was found in a ditch. It had been dragged off the trail. There was drag marks evident, and she was kind of partially submerged in some mud and water that were in this little depression, this little ditch that was right there. The clothing was disrupted. There was blood from horrendous beating that she took on her face, on the ground, on trees around. It was one of the worst beatings I think I've ever heard of. The autopsy revealed 48 total injuries, primarily to her head and neck, with blunt force trauma from blows and stomping on her throat, which caused asphyxiation, to the point, and this will become important later in the case, but a very clear footprint bruised onto this poor girl's body. So, yeah, definitely defensive wounds on her hands and on her arms. Shoe impressions on her face, on her cheek, her neck, her chest, which was consistent with a size 10 to 11 boot. No other like stab wounds, gunshot wounds, or anything like that. And then obviously,
So it was all manual or foot.
Yeah, it was just beating.
Yeah.
Is what it was. Yeah. So the police immediately cordoned off the area. They made about a 100-yard radius and just closed it off, all for 100 yards in every direction. I mean, they just closed this thing off. They photographed the scene. They brought in videographers to document the scene before they disturbed anything. I mean, I just can't say it enough, but you're talking about this tiny little department, and they didn't know if they'd ever had a murder in this town, ever. And they did this shit by the book.
Yeah.
I mean, they got this poor little girl laying there, beaten to death, and they were still heads up enough to say, okay, stop. We need to photograph and video everything before we move anything. I mean, This is shit that I wish would happen in investigations in huge departments that deal with 50 homicides a day.
Yeah.
These guys never deal with homicide, and they're like, this is what we got to do. This is by the book. And it pays off, as we'll hear for sure. So they gathered up the evidence that was on the scene. After they videotaped everything, they started a grid search across that perimeter that they had set up. They set up all the lighting, like I said, so that they could continue this throughout the night. They picked up her jeans, her tank top, her underwear, which had been torn and displaced. Everything was bloodstained. They, collected fibers, collected everything they needed for DNA. They took footwear impressions. They photographed the soil disturbances from the trail to the ditch, the drag marks. They took samples of the dirt and the vegetation to compare for transfer evidence. There was blood splatter on a tree. It was on the ground. It was on the body. They swabbed everything for DNA, and it was pretty much all confirmed to be April's. And it was in a pattern that would suggest that she was receiving blows while standing and being dragged. And then her phone was not found at this point. And so they took swabs from her body, from her mouth or genital areas, from her fingerprints, searching for any foreign DNA that may be present. Took hair and fiber samples from her body and clothing. The weather all the weather data was noted. There was no rain, which helped to preserve any prints or anything. They also noted like the insects insect behavior at
Yeah.
the time
Okay.
of death, and then the status of rigor mortis and all of that. I mean, like I said, it just reads like a freaking textbook investigation. It really does. So the autopsy was conducted on July 25th by the Macomb County medical examiner, who, like I said earlier, he confirmed 48 injuries to this little girl, most of which was blunt force trauma to the head, and the cause of death was asphyxiation. The toxicology reports were negative for any drugs or alcohol. Like we said, it looked as though there had been a sexual assault, but there was no semen or any of the other indicators of sexual assault. So it was determined that it was an attempted sexual assault that had failed. And so news spread freaking quickly, which, if you've ever lived in a small town, I actually have never lived in this small of a town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tiny, around 1,700 people, but I've lived in, fairly small towns, and boy, news travels quick when something like this happens, but in a town this small, it's going to be damn near instant. Everybody in town's going to know immediately, and it's sad as shit because her little friends heard that a body was found on the trail and immediately started texting each other and checking in. And, several of them then would go on to say April never answered back. We knew it wasn't her, but we were just all checking in with each other. But then she never answered. And so it's just the whole, everything about this case sucks ass.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that. So, I mean, obviously you can imagine the immediate shock and disbelief in Armada. I mean, this is the kind of town where, I noted it in my notes here. The first murder was this was the first murder in over 40 years. So
Goodness sake.
Not a single cop probably on the force had ever witnessed a homicide, at least not in this town, unless they moved from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Most of the residents probably have no memory of a murder in this town. I mean, it is an unbelievably safe little town. This shit just doesn't happen here. And so I can remember the first murder that occurred in Cody when I was a kid, and I was like, holy shit, like there was a murder here in Cody.
Yeah.
Like, it was because it just doesn't happen ever. The residents expressed widespread just disbelief, and it said that they were completely overcome with sadness. Their hearts were broken. And the school superintendent, Michael Mursari, stated, quote, "Yesterday it was disbelief, and today it's reality." Neighbors and acquaintances were stunned by the brutality of this murder. I mean, it's a really bad one. And so, when you have a town like of this size, 1,700, you have a girl that's going to school, you have a girl that's involved in other activities, and a girl that is, a regular church attendance and was involved in church activities and all that kind of stuff. When you're talking about a town of 1,700 people, probably 80 to 90% of the entire population knew this girl, knew her mother, or knew her stepfather, had ties to this family.
Probably the type of town that shuts down for high school football games.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's the kind of situation where it literally touches every resident personally, where, you could say that in a lot of different places, but this is really that case. Yeah. Not like, oh my gosh, I remember when it happened. It is like, oh my gosh, I've got to call them because I know this person, or, like you intimately know these people that are involved in this. And so the neighbors and acquaintances were stunned, like I said, and just dumbfounded by the violence. And this is coming from a town that never has anything bad happen. So they've got to just be beside themselves. So word traveled way quickly, mostly by word of mouth. At this time, like I said, this is a time when social media was at its peak. So all kinds of stuff on social media, phone calls, by that evening, families were huddled indoors discussing the absolute unimaginable that had just happened.
Yeah.
The community put pink ribbons, which was April's favorite color, They tied pink ribbons to trees, to fences, to poles. They had signs for miles around the town and the trail. People wore pink clothing in solidarity. Memorials sprang up at the trail site with flowers, notes, stuffed animals. I mean, April's mom was an absolute mess, as you can imagine any of us would be. One resident was noted as saying the hardest part was seeing April's mother and realizing that April would miss milestones like weddings,
Yeah.
you know? And then anytime you have a situation like this with a child, a 14-year-old, you have to think also about her peers at school. They're going to be particularly affected like this. You know, death,
Mhm.
unfortunately, I lost a lot of friends when I was a kid, and death to kids at that age, I mean, it's a huge impact.
Mhm.
It's never easy to lose a friend, but you know, when you're 50, 60, 70 years old, it just becomes more routine the older you get. When,
Sadly,
when you're, you know, 10, 12, 14, 15, 60, whatever,
you're invincible.
you're invincible. It's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
You're not going to die. And so it is a major kick to the belly when you lose a friend. And so they were particularly affected, obviously crying, trying to console each other. And their grief was described as raw, with songs like Butterfly Kisses invoking profound sadness throughout her little community of friends. So this obviously led to freaking panic and fear in the community, as you know, I mean, you're going from a town that literally doesn't lock their doors at night, doesn't lock their cars, probably leaves the keys in the ignition of their cars, to what the hell do we do? I mean, you literally are like that because
Yeah.
you have no experience with it. I mean, okay, yeah, you're downtown New York or whatever. This is just run of the mill shit. We do this every day.
Sadly.
But when you're out, you know, in a little town like this where you've never encountered anything, you're like, how do we keep safe at night? And then you
Mhm.
overreact to the point that I mean, I can just see it. It's hot and everything, and you have a kid on the second story that opens their window, and mom comes out of a dead sleep and is in their room. You close that window and lock it right now. You know, you can just, as sad as it is, you can just see it all playing out. I can just understand with empathy what this community was going through all this, and just the absolute disbelief of what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
How did this just happen? And so, you know, and then media attention obviously was drawn to this pretty quickly. And you had this little tiny community next to a very large community in Detroit, right? So you have a pretty large media presence nearby.
Yeah.
And so, and them, just like everybody else, if they're talking about a murder that's happened in downtown Detroit, especially during this period of time, a reporter's probably not even going to roll over in bed to answer the phone for that one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, let's be honest, Detroit was a really, really, really rough place.
Yeah.
With a lot of murders happening. So, and the only reason I bring that up is just to kind of set the scene of the dynamic between the two different places. You have Detroit, where it's like, oh, there's another murder that really sucks, but not a big surprise, to just a few miles away. And it's like, oh my God, what?
Yeah.
This does not happen there.
Yeah.
So you have all these freaking reporters, you know, coming to the scene and everything. A lot of the community members were appreciative of it, but others were like, you're exploiting this little girl's death. And I can understand both sides of the
Yeah.
argument. You
Yeah.
know, I really can. I do know that as much as I talk about, you know, wanting to give voices to the voices, get these stories out, that kind of stuff, I do think a lot of initial media coverage is very exploitative,
Mhm.
and they're just going for views, and they don't really give a shit about the
Yeah.
case itself, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, as we work through this case, we'll dive into a lot of that. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to dive into like the autopsy examination and the bad shit that happened. I mean, I think I've set the scene pretty well as far as, you know, it's brutal. This is the reason that this is such a tough case to cover, because I'm not saying that a case where a girl her age is murdered isn't tough, because I have a struggle with kids in general, you
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
But this one is just so brutal, like unimaginably brutal.
48.
And beatings.
How is she even big enough for 48 different?
Yeah, I know. And it's not like 48 stab wounds, 48 gunshots. It's like 48 blows. So, I mean, it's just a really, really tough one. 14 years. That's all the time that April Millsap got. 14 years to laugh, to grow, to dream, saving animals and helping others, to walk the trail behind her house with her dog Penny, to text her mom silly things and make goofy faces on Instagram. That was her life. And then, in the span of minutes, it was taken. She sent a text that read, "I think I almost got kidnapped." But it wasn't almost. It was already happening. And the fact that she had the clarity to type those words, even as something unimaginable unfolded around her, tells us everything that we need to know about April Millsap. That she was brave, alert, and doing everything that she could do to survive. When Penny led the people to discover her, it wasn't just a moment of heartbreak, it was a signal. What followed was an outpouring, a town flooded with fear, volunteers combing the woods, candlelight vigils, national headlines, and behind it all, a family shattered, a community violated, a killer still out there for now. April wasn't looking for trouble that day. She didn't go into the woods to meet anyone. She didn't take risks. She did what any of us might do. She took a walk, and someone decided that made her vulnerable. That decision, that act, that evil, it changed everything. But April is more than her murder. She is not defined by what was done to her, but by who she was. A fierce little girl in a quiet Michigan town. A girl who loved her dog. A girl who was deeply loved. A life that mattered. Next time, we'll dive deeper into the investigation that followed, the suspects, the surveillance footage, the strange motorcycle sighting, and the man who finally landed in custody. But the question will remain, was it justice? Or just a convenient end to a horrifying story? Until then, say her name, remember her smile, and don't ever forget that even the most ordinary walks can end in tragedy when someone with dark intent is lying in wait. Before the headlines, before the investigators, before the questions and the horror in the courtroom, there was a little girl, just a girl. April Millsap wasn't some cautionary tale or cold case file. She was a person, a daughter, a friend, a kid who loved animals, laughed loudly, and left behind a trail of hearts that still haven't healed. She lived in Armada, Michigan, a town where life moved slow, where people knew each other's dogs by name, and where danger felt like a distant rumor. April fit perfectly in that setting. She wasn't just kind, she was vibrant. She had this energy that people noticed. Not loud or showy, but present, real. The kind that draws people to you without you ever trying. She loved her dog Penny more than most people love anything. Penny was her shadow, her confidant, her best friend on four legs. It's hard to talk about April without talking about Penny because that was their bond. Unshakable, pure. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She didn't just say it like a passing idea, she really meant it. She had the heart for it, the drive, the patience, the soul. Ask anyone who knew her. She had a way of understanding animals that felt almost intuitive. The kind of kid that you could picture one day opening her own little clinic, and hugging every patient that walked in. She was silly too, goofy in the best way. Selfies with scrunched noses, inside jokes with her mom, and a laugh that made other people laugh even when they didn't know why. She wasn't perfect, no one is, but she was good. And that should have been enough to keep her safe. April Millsap had dreams, plans, and years ahead of her. She had homecoming dances in her future, college, career, maybe kids of her own someday. But all of that was taken, not lost, taken. And while we will explore the how and the who in the episodes ahead, we will never forget the why we're telling this story. Because April deserves more than to be remembered for her final walk. She deserves to be remembered for her first steps, for the way that she loved, for the way that she lived. This is the beginning of her tribute, and we'll keep building it piece by piece until the world remembers not just how she died, but who she was. That's it for this episode of Dark Dialogue, but April Millsap's story is just beginning. What happened on that trail didn't end with the discovery of her body. It launched an investigation, a community-wide panic, and a search for justice that would test the very foundation of a small Michigan town.
In the next episode, we'll dig into the timeline of July 24th, 2014. April's last known movements, the text that chilled everyone to the bone, and the frantic hours that followed.
Until then, help us keep April's name alive. Take a second right now to follow the show, leave a review, hit that thumbs up, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear her story. These cases don't get solved in silence. They get solved when people care enough to keep talking.
You can support our work directly by subscribing to our Substack, joining our Patreon, or sending a one-time donation through Ko-fi. And if you're ready to go a step further, check out our Adopt a Victim program, where you can help shine a light on cases like April's that still demand answers.
And if you want to take even more action, join the Dark Dialogue Collective. That's our boots on the ground effort to put real searchers on the ground immediately when disaster strikes.
You can find all those links in the show notes or reach out directly. We're always listening at info@darkdialogue.com.
April was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a dreamer, and a life interrupted, and we're not done telling her story.
This is Dark Dialogue, and we'll see you next time.
Keep listening, keep sharing, and keep the dialogue alive.